Let's talk about Royal High pity systems and whether or not I feel like that would be a good contribution to the game. Now, I actually got this video recommendation from Real Silence, I think is how you're supposed to pronounce that, and this is the comment that they left me. We're going to go through it together. But basically, if you guys don't know, a bunch of people have been demanding that Royal High adds a quote pity system, which, if you don't know what that is, it's basically like when gacha games, which is basically kind of like almost like gambling, kind of. There's like a chance, a lottery kind of thing. There's a chance you might get this, chance you might get that. When they basically set a number of tries or number of times, an example for Royal High, you would wish at the fountain, and once you reach that certain level of wishes, let's say 100, 200, whatever, you are automatically going to get a halo, which I feel like in theory makes sense, but we're gonna get into some logistics of it because unfortunately I feel like this is the worst idea ever, and Royal High definitely is not implementing this anytime soon, but I do want to talk about it because so many of you guys have been asking for it, and like, this will fix everything, and I don't think it will, babe. So we're gonna get into it, but basically, Real Silence left me this comment which reads, "Hey Pommy, what do you think of players wanting a pity system? I've seen so many people ask or mention it. My personal opinion is that it shouldn't be added. A pity system, from what I recall, are in gacha games where you play to like roll and gamble for something, like Genshin for example. I believe it's a pity system, which, side note, another pity system is Infinity Nikki. There's always a guarantee for if you do a certain amount of pulls, you are guaranteed to get at least a 5-star item. So in the case of Royal High, you could do, I don't know, example 200 wishes or something, and you are guaranteed to get a halo. Now, they're going to say, wishing at the fountain isn't exactly like that. The point of halos is to be a legendary item. I think if there's a pity system, it would lower the value. It isn't as if you're paying for a better character or a new ability to use, just an accessory that you have a chance by winning if you just get on every 2 hours and press a few buttons. I think that players are way too invested into the game to be complaining about inflation or crying that they don't have a halo." Which, side note, I've seen so many people saying that this pity system would fix everything, but that's like, you know, I'm not trying to be insensitive, but like an analogy for you is, think of the lottery, right? People buy lottery tickets because, oh my god, maybe I could win $24 million, but most people recognize that they probably won't, but they buy the ticket anyways because it's fun, it gives them adrenaline, it's a good gift, and you know, maybe you can win like $2, $5, whatever it may be, right? Which I won $46 on a lottery ticket on Christmas. Yay! But anyways, basically, the whole point of it is that a bunch of people will purchase lottery tickets, and that money is then used to fund the next lottery. Because lottery companies make money through ticket purchases, and some of that money, only a tiny fraction, goes towards the prizes. So homes, cars, cash, whatever it may be, right? And I feel like this is kind of like the same logic as saying, oh, well, instead of having a lottery, let's just like give all that money to people who don't have money, which in theory sounds good. Like, let's give a homeless person $24 million. They can use it, we can rehome a bunch of people, build infrastructure. That sounds great in theory, but the issue is, if you have a system like that where people are guaranteed something without having to necessarily do anything or for anything lucky to happen, nobody would buy lottery tickets and a lottery would become broke. They wouldn't have any money to give away. And that's kind of how this in my head works, right? If you have it, so example, every 200 wishes, you automatically get a halo. That is the pity system example, right? The issue would be that every player, even though you think you're smart, every single person on that game would have like 16 alt accounts, and they would all go every single day and wish. And then on the same day, 200 days later, let's say 500,000 people would get a halo. And then that halo, its value, nothing. It's going to be worth like cents, like basically nothing. And that's because that's how supply and demand works. If you have a ton of an item, the item is no longer seen as rare and nobody wants it, therefore nobody is going to pay astronomical amounts for that item. That's why certain things like new releases, like the new Valentine's Day top, which I will be making a video on later, other assets like stuff in the mermaid shop, different halos, mermaid tails, stuff like that, are all very rare because there's a limited quantity of them and not many people can get them. And what makes them so special is that there is absolutely no upper hand that anybody typically has when wishing at the fountain, because it's supposed to be completely random and it's up to luck. And luck is something that, you know, makes people feel excited, because I remember as a kid, every time I went to the wishing where the fountain started to wish, I would get so excited, being like, oh my god, today's my day, I'm gonna get a halo, and then I'd lose 10 diamonds or something, right? And I feel like that's a pretty canon event, but if there wasn't that excitement, that enticement, that motivation to join Royal High every day to try and increase your chances, or to feel like maybe you could win the halo today, then players wouldn't do it. If it came to people just obviously having to wish 200 times or something like that, then people could skip a day and come back another day, and there just wouldn't be that, you know, push for people to join every day and try every single time. And it kind of, in my opinion, would take the hope out of a lot of people and would just encourage people to mindlessly log in and log off, because there's no chance they're going to win a halo anyways until the 200th day, you know what I mean? But anyways, this person goes on to say, I'm saying this as someone who spends all day on Royal High. My level is around 560 I would say, I think they meant like, I don't know if they meant 56,000 or 560,000. Not a casual player in the slightest, but regardless, this person knows what they're talking about. Players are putting a lot on devs, and when it's people who are trading high amounts of diamonds for items, this is also two things can be true at one situation, but how do people expect the devs to give out more diamonds while making sure their game is worthy of spending time on? Which, this is a very good point. Again, if you just hand out halos like, like it's water, here you go guys, here you go, here you go, here you go, they're not gonna be rare anymore, and then there won't be as much like players playing the game for longer periods of time to grind to afford things in the mermaid shop, or for players to be wishing every single day, stuff like that. It just, you have to have a certain amount of things left up to chance for players to be engaged by the game itself, otherwise the game would die. Now, going on that, they go on to say, I get it's hard to gain diamonds, but the devs cannot make it too easy. It would get boring that way, and they want people to play their game. And even if they do, what makes people think the values won't go up because the values won't go, I think they meant to say down, because it's easier, go up because it's easier to get diamonds now. Okay, now you have 3 million you've been wanting for those Valkwings, but the cost triples since it's easier to get diamonds. Surely if you farm enough, you can get it. I'm not saying this will happen, but no matter what, items that the majority of players think are valuable will take a long time to get if you farm, which that's exactly right. Example, when my parents were kids, a chocolate bar cost like 10 cents. Now a chocolate bar is like $3. Okay, and you'd say, oh, that's so I'm making more money this year, because example, when my grandparents were kids, they made like 15 grand a year, and they're like, whoa guys, I'm rich. And now if you make 100 grand a year, at least where I live, it's like, okay, you can have a 1-bedroom apartment, enjoy yourself, babe. You know what I mean? So it's like, when income rises and stuff like that, that doesn't mean that everything else stays stagnant. The price of everything don't inflate. That's inflation. That's how inflation works. And so even if you were to get more diamonds, the cost and the value of the items are typically still seen as the same. They're still seen as rare, but you then have to pay more for the exact same thing. So giving players more diamonds wouldn't necessarily fix the value system. And this person makes a very good point by saying that. They go on to say, and also maybe buying diamonds for a lot of money will get people to not want to buy those diamonds, making it not so pay to win. I do feel like people who have school or a job, or even both, but if that is the case, you have much more to worry about than in-game item being expensive. Then they say they play the game to relax, and if that's the case, relax while farming, have something play in the background to help that ADHD, figure out farming routine for you. I played an alt and had no game passes. I found the best way to get diamonds would be Campus 2/1, and switch between them once you're done your homework, and remember to sleep shower every time you get to 0. It doesn't take long. So, little farming tip for you guys from this person. But regardless, if you couldn't tell by this video, I obviously think the Royal High, people demanding a pity sort of system is really, really just not gonna work. It would, in theory, maybe think it would work, it just wouldn't. I don't think so. And Royal High actually had to come out with a statement about this because so many people were spreading misinformation that this was going to happen. And they wrote, okay, I probably shouldn't acknowledge this, but I do want to clarify a few things. We did not say there would be a pity system for the Halo, and we do not have plans to add a 2x Halo, and we do not have plans to add a 2x Halo luck event. Which, I don't know who said that, bro. Who said that? Which one of you? Anyways, we're seeing a lot of TikTok comments suggesting this, and I want to address it now before it snowballs, similar to the treasure chest event, where misinformation led some players to believe that we were giving away a ballerina set. Misinformation spreads quickly, so we want to set expectations early, which love the transparency. This weekend is a 2 times XP event. You'll earn XP twice as fast as usual, which means you will be earning diamonds twice as fast. Which, I'm going to talk about this in a video later this week. Additionally, while I recently made a post about inappropriate player realms, this does not mean it's a widespread issue. The vast majority of player realms are appropriate and beautiful. Rather than responding to individual comments, we chose to make an official post. The situation is being well moderated, and there's a team actually monitoring it, not just one person. Which, side note, I did join Royal High, and within like 5 minutes, I found like 3 inappropriate realms. So I don't know. I think players are just making them too quickly for them to be effectively moderated. You know, to a degree, humans can only do so much. And when you have like hundreds of thousands of people like spamming, creating realms, and people joining every couple minutes, and people leaving every couple minutes, and changing realm, all this sort of stuff, it's very hard to moderate. And so I hope an in-game feature will be added so that players can manually moderate stuff to help Royal High obviously do this more effectively. Because unfortunately, I really wish people wouldn't do this, but I came across one where someone had like a noose hanging from the ceiling, like really, in a chair. That's weird. You're weird. And there's one, it was like it said something like girls blanking room. I'm saying blank, but it was obviously something different. It was the name that was very inappropriate. I'm like, no. Like, you know what I mean? It's unfortunate, but Regardless, I obviously don't think a pity system will ever be coming to Royale High. I am interested to learn more about the 2x XP event before I make a video on it, so I will be making a video on that later this week to say if I think it's worth it or not. But regardless, I want to know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think a pity system is needed for the Halos? How do you think they would impact Halo values? Again, I've shared I think a pity system would ruin the value of Halos, and they would just become astronomically expensive because everybody has them, but then you have to pay way more to get them, and they're still like the same value technically. But regardless, let me know your thoughts down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!